Okay, great. This technology is pretty amazing. Love it. Good afternoon. It's being 3 p.m. Thank you for that, by the way. I would like to call the City of Santa Fe Independent Redistricting Commission meeting to order. And this is our 8th meeting and our final meeting. And I would like to ask the city clerk if she will please call the roll so that we can determine if we have a quorum, and also so that the record will well reflect who's present. And I might add Commissioner Quintana will be joining us on Zoom. So,
thank you, Chair. Carl Boaz, the stenographer, will take roll.
thank you.
Ellie Mae Ortiz,
Present.
Christopher Grazer,
Present.
Gary Donato, Gail Riekers,
Present.
Earl Breckner,
Present.
Jeffrey Weber, and is Carmela Quintana excused?
I'm on here, present.
Okay.
Commissioner
We do
Quintana
have quorum, Madam Chair.
is on Zoom. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So we have the full complement of our commissioners. Welcome. So happy to see us all here today, our final day. Let's move on to approval of the agenda, and it is the agenda dated June the 30th that you received last week.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve the agenda
Second.
and a second. Do you have any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a point. As we did in the past, before we go into discussion, I would recommend, request that public comment number 7 be swapped with action items discussion. So public comment becomes item 6, and action items discussion becomes item 7. Thank you.
I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
No objection.
Thank you, Commissioners, for accepting that as a friendly amendment. So that will approve the agenda with item public comments being number 6 and action items discussion being number 7. All in favor? We should probably get a roll call vote. All in favor on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Quintana. We are unanimous. So the agenda is approved as amended. So item number 4 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. And as you all know, we had our meeting just barely a few hours ago on Tuesday. And so the minutes are not ready for this evening, so we don't have minutes to approve. But before we move to the next item, I would like to ask the staff, how is it that we're going to, what is the process we're going to follow to approve those minutes, since this is the last meeting of the commission? Do we have to reconvene to do that?
Madam Chair, we asked the legal office to give us advice on that, and once we hear back from them, I will let you know how we proceed with approving those minutes.
Okay.
And the minutes for today as well.
Correct.
But then wouldn't we need to approve the minutes from that meeting where we approved the minutes?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So when did the, and I don't know if this is,
Should be after that, we'll just present to the governing body.
okay. All right, you'll let us know the process to follow in doing that. And you're right, Commissioner, we might have continuous meetings just to finish approving the minutes. But I'm sure the city will work that out. I'm sure this is not the first time this has happened. And there, I'm sure, is a process. So thank you very much. So let's move on to matters from the staff. Item number 5, is there anything that needs to be shared with the commission?
Nothing to report at this time, Chair.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So that's going to move us to public comment. And normally, for the majority of our meetings, we have allowed the public to comment on the activity that this commission is addressing. And I do see a couple of people in the audience, and I'm curious, do we have anyone that would like to address the commission? Yes, ma'am. If you could please stand at the podium and state your name, and feel free to share your comments with us.
Red light. Okay. Good afternoon. Mary Shrubin. I've had a few thoughts about, since Tuesday's meeting, for you about the question of when we get to the point of adding districts, which means adding more councils, which means changing the charter, which is a whole bigger complexity. And I wondered if you might put in your notes for the next redistricting committee, bless them, in advance, that something that the council members and you or the committee might want to see is the distribution of commercial areas, vacant land, and special designated districts that have already been made by the Planning Commission and Council or, other people like that. So, for example, districts would include the airport overlay, and maybe in 10 years we'll actually have something in the St. Mike's Midtown Campus overlay, and other things like that. Certainly the downtown historic and the business district and all of those capital overlay districts that exist, which I'm not sure what kind of shape they're in right now, but they exist. So that would be one map, and usually our GIS office keeps track of that a little bit closely. So it's not up to date momentarily and daily, but it's something that you might consider, because that would make a big, all of these things would make a big difference. And if we have any open space left, undeveloped land, undeveloped tracts that are within the city limits and not about to be annexed from the county would be a good one for the councilors to know. That is a question that comes up frequently at Planning Commission and other places like that. And the third one is the commercial districts. And this one is going to be a lot more difficult because we don't have a way of defining commercial districts except for the special overlay zones. So like all of Cerrillos Road is going to be a commercial district, even though there are one or two houses that still front on it. But that brings into question things like where there used to be commercial zoning, like, for example, before the Planning Commission right now, there's some C2 zoning changed to R residential zoning, where those have been converted to multifamily housing. Those aren't going to be reflected on the zoning maps, and so that's not a good map to look at because it doesn't get updated as accurately and as frequently as it should be. If there's ever a long-range planning committee, that may happen, but I'm not holding out for that. So those three of the extent of the commercial districts, the extent of the special zoning areas or overlay zones and that kind of stuff, and the open space, undeveloped land, tracts of land that are zoned any way they want to be, but undeveloped at this point, would be good for the councilors to know so that they share out those commercial zones. Oh, there's one more. The governmental institution, because there's federal, state, county, and city land here within the city's limits. And if those could be, I know they can't be apportioned easily, but at least so that there's a recognition that all of one zone, for example, lies in one district or crosses two districts or something like that, so that the councilors are aware of that, because we'll be in a position to be doing, as we are this year, another round of council appointments, council candidates and all that, and I think that's a good thing for them to know. I know it doesn't have to do with the strict redistricting, which is by population and the number of residences, but it's, I think, with our city zoning, moving the direction that it's zoning where it's not mixed and it's very segregated, that those distinct districts where there are no people living would be good to know for the public and for the councilors who are running for those offices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you for joining us at a previous meeting and again this evening. Your comments are very well taken We have a very good note taker who will be listing all of this in our minutes, and we will ask the city to forward our minutes to the appropriate committees that will be dealing with these issues. So we appreciate you identifying that. Any comments by any of the commissioners in regard to? Thank you for joining us. Yes, Commissioner Donato.
I just have one question. In the district you live in, Mary, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Any other comments? All right, so we're moving right along. We're moving to action items discussion. And this is on our agenda as the final decision on the redistricting map concepts. And over the last 7 meetings, beginning back April the 7th, the Commission of Volunteer Community Members, along with our consultants, really expert consultants, research and polling, have been diligently working to comply with the charter and the Santa Fe mandate to establish a district plan to adjust the boundaries of the 4 city council districts based on the final 2020 census. So that was our mission, our goal. We started in April, and today is our last meeting in that regard. And in establishing the district boundaries, the Commission is required to, as much as possible, assure that our decision is based exclusively on 5 redistricting principles, and our consultant will address those, remind us all again a little bit later. Research and polling, our consultants have attended all of our meetings, and they have provided this commission with 6 different concepts of proposals that we could choose from to redistrict the city. At our last meeting, which was June 28th, a new version emerged, and it was called Modified Concept A3, and the commission voted to move that forward for discussion today. So what I'd like to have our consultant do is to provide detail on that modified concept A3, and provide any comparisons that he feels he needs to provide that will further explain that based on our conversations on Tuesday, and then also maybe address the 5 principles and any other data that he feels is necessary. So if I can turn this over to Brian and thank him for joining us again and helping us move forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. With me today, Michael Sharp. Michael Sharp's the head of redistricting at Research and Polling, assisting us. We had spoke about Brittany, and she's still in the hospital. She's getting better each day, and she'll probably be released from the hospital tomorrow, and she's sad that she wasn't able to see this whole process through. She really enjoyed working with all of you, but we wish her the best, and she's doing fine. We're in good hands with Michael. And so, as the chair requested, throughout all these meetings, we have gone over the principles of districting. I'll do a much briefer version of that, but just to go on record again, and we are on YouTube where there might be people from the public listening in as well. And so without further ado, on the slides, so as we've talked about before on the first slide, redistricting is something that we do typically every 10 years to adjust the district boundaries after the census data are released. Santa Fe is different and unique in the sense that the charter does allow you to do it more than once a decade, and in fact, you did. Back in 2015, after a major annexation, the city of Santa Fe redistricted. So the current districts already account for a major annexation that did occur. About 13,200 people were annexed back then, and the plans that are currently in effect do take that into account. What are the 5 principles of districting that we've been following throughout this process? And they're up on the slides there. Equal population, which we'll define in a moment. Protecting minority voting rights. There are portions of the Voting Rights Act that we're very careful about not violating regarding protecting certain racial, ethnic, language groups that are protected by the Voting Rights Act. Contiguity, we know what that is. Each district must be contiguous. You can't have 2 islands within a district. Compactness, you know it when you see it. We're looking to keep the shape of the districts not looking like snakes or pencils, but more like circles or squares. Of course, you're also limited by the unusual districts, city boundaries, which are not exactly in a circle or square to start. And then, of course, communities of interest, which we'll talk about in a moment. So the ideal population of a district when it comes to equal population is simply taking the city's population, 87,500, and dividing it by 4. And so the ideal population of a district is 21,800. Now, you are allowed some leeway. The courts speak of substantially equal population. And the state law for local governments speaks to having an allowable population deviation of no more than plus or minus 5% from the ideal population. So here in the slide you can see that means a range of about 20,700 to 22,900 is allowable under law, and also allowable under federal case law. Communities of interest are things that you can also be considered. Typically, we think of a group or area that has shared characteristics, the neighborhoods, the culture, language, historical traditions, geographic boundaries, lived experiences. The tricky thing about communities of interest are that different people, different commissioners even, might have different viewpoints on what those communities of interest are and which ones should take precedence over others. Maintaining the core of existing districts is considered a community interest. Respecting political subdivisions, avoiding precinct splits, taking into account where incumbents' residential locations are. Those are all communities of interest that could be considered. In fact, in the ordinance, it prioritizes these. We've talked about this before. All of the plans that have been drawn stay within the plus or minus 5%. They all maintain, there's no issues with minority voting rights in our opinion. Communities of interest have been discussed. Compactness and contiguity as well. So the Santa Fe ordinance also allows the commission that you may assign appropriate weight to minimizing precinct splits or minimizing voter confusion in switching elected officials into different districts. You would give this the weight that you think it's worth. The Santa Fe's population actually grew by 29% in the past decade. However, that was, again, starting in 2010. When we look at the next slide, we see there's only been a change of 7.9% since the last annexation. And so your job would have been much more dramatically different if we did not have that 2015 annexation, because you would have been dealing with more growth and more unequal growth within the city after that annexation. The districts would look dramatically changed. This is an important slide in that it shows us looking at current districts with 2020 census, that it's really District 4 that grew, that has a 12.7% higher population than the ideal population of a district. The other districts were relatively close in line with the plus or minus 5. But anytime you have one district that's off by almost 13%, it could have a ripple effect on the other districts throughout the line, depending on the plans that you were to select. But basically, you can see where that growth was since 2015. If we were to look at the current districts for a moment, and I think we could stick with this, Michael. On the current districts, just again to remind us, these districts were adopted by the Redistricting Commission of 2015, taking into account the annexation. As you all know, Santa Fe has 4 city council districts. They're dual-member districts, so there's 2 councilors per district. I-25 is the southern boundary for the city of Santa Fe. The village of Agua Fria, as we've heard some people in the public talk about, which is not colored in because it is not in the city, and so we do not take it into account on redistricting. The boundaries do currently stay on major thoroughfares and physical features. District 1 basically covers the northern portion of the city, bordered by East Alameda and the Santa Fe River and Cerrillos. District 2 covers southeastern side of Santa Fe. District 3 covers southwest Santa Fe, both sides of Airport Road, Tierra Contenta and the like. And District 4 covers basically south Santa Fe between Yucca and Cerrillos Road. It also incorporates some areas crossing over Cerrillos Road to pick up neighborhoods between Jemez and Sila Road. So that's pretty much the presentation. The chair asked me then to move toward a new plan that came out of the last meeting. So just to remind you and to inform the public, in the course of showing one of the plans a couple days ago in a public meeting out on the southwest side of town by Tierra Contenta, we talked about a plan called A3. And the impression that we got was, or at least correct me if I'm wrong, that many of you sort of liked that plan or thought it was worthy of consideration. But one of the things that you were less enamored with in that plan was that it happened to split one precinct. Precinct splits are allowable, but you give it the weight you want to. And in your opinion, you seem to be more concerned about a precinct split. And so you asked us to come up with a plan that had the spirit of A3, but modified it to avoid the precinct split. And in that meeting, actually 2 days ago, in that public meeting, we actually did show a plan that we're able to move a couple of precincts and accomplish that same objective of A3 without splitting a precinct. And but we hadn't shown it publicly. And so we'd like to do that. And so it's called A3 Modified. And so it's up on the screen. Basically, the objective of A3, you remember, one of the objectives was to have districts 3 and 4 on the lower end of the allowable population deviation, which really means a high negative deviation in those areas to anticipate growth in the future. And so the objective of concept A3 and also A3 modified was to maintain that objective. So you can see in Districts 3 and District 4 that there are high negative deviations. I can't see that close, but I think negative 3.5 and negative 3.9 or so, 3.7. And so we maintained that objective in the modified plan. So what are the changes? Well, most of the changes are the same as in A3, so we'll remind you first of those. In District 1, the boundary, so in order to reduce the population in District 3 and 4, we have to obviously increase the population in 1 and 2. And by increasing the deviations in 1 and 2, you're also, that's sort of a good thing also, because those areas theoretically are not going to grow as much. So keep them on the high end now since they're slower growing, and then keep the areas that are growing a lot on the lower, higher negative deviation. So it all works out in the wash. And so, but what was done with A3 as well as A3 modified was that District 1, the boundary moved south a little from Alameda to Canyon Road. And it picked up 2 precincts by the state capitol, precincts 36 and 127. The other thing is District 1 moved west on Siler and picked up both sides of Siler Road. It used to end District 1 on Siler Road, but now it picks up both sides of Siler Road, the precinct right next to it, which I read in the New Mexican, there are some marketing efforts going on to take that whole Siler Road area and try to promote it. And so I think having both sides of Siler Road in the same district seems to work well. In District 2, so that's how we increased the population in District 1 and started losing population in the other ones. In District 2, then, the boundary crosses Yucca and goes, for the most part, to Camino Carlos Rey, south of Arroyo de los Chamisas. So we're, again, shifting the population. We're trying to get some population out of District 4 and 3. So then what happens in districts 3 and 4 to avoid splitting precinct 174, which was what you didn't like in concept A3. We simply moved precinct 116 into District 4. 116 is between Airport Road and Jaguar. It's a lot of mobile home parks, storage facilities, high-density apartments, Coles and the State Motor Vehicle Department, we noticed, are in that precinct. And in some of the other concepts that we worked with earlier, precinct 116 was in District 4, but in this particular A3 it wasn't, so now it's back in. And then moved all of precinct 174 and precinct 138 back into District 3. And so, and you know, that area there between up to as far as our Fria, you know, fits in nicely. In order to accomplish this, there's one small neighborhood association roadrunner that has to be also split. It's right on, Rafina often, the neighborhood associations there tend to run vertically. And so anytime you don't put something all the way from Agua Fria down to Cerrillos Road together, there could be a problem. So it unifies everything to the west, but that one, by keeping precinct 174 intact, as we see it there, and going only as far as Rafina to make the numbers work, that small neighborhood association is partially split. So A3 modified maintains the objective of keeping districts 3 and 4 with less population to anticipate growth. It increases the population in districts 1 and 2 where there's slower growth, stays within the legal standard of plus or minus 5%, the A's in the first part, in the first place, one of the strengths of the A series, if you will, was that the growth between the south side of Santa Fe is divided between districts 3 and 4. And so we see that the areas in Tierra Contenta and south of Tierra Contenta are in District 3, and then the areas on the south side of District 4 are in District 4. So the high growth areas are split as compared to some of the other plans where all of southern Santa Fe is in one district. So that objective is maintained in the modification. The only new modification is the impact of what happens with 116 and 174 and 138 based on your desire to not split any precincts. That would be a summary of A3 modified.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderoff. Appreciate that. So I'm going to open the floor for discussion amongst the commissioners or any motions that you all would like to make. And if there's still further clarifying questions that we feel we need to ask Mr. Sanderoff, this would be the appropriate time. Commissioner Breckner?
If I may, Madam Chair, Brian, you mentioned that Roadrunner as a neighborhood association, but your chart shows it to be a homeowners association.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify that because in some regards, homeowners association tend to be business related within that community. It's a very small one, just a couple of blocks as it appears on the map.
You are correct. Thank you for correcting me.
And neighborhood associations may have more of an affinity interest than a homeowners association. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you. Thank you.
I noticed within city documents that they do encourage homeowners associations and subdivision associations to become neighborhood associations, go through that process, which I agree they tend to have more clout and more impact on public policy.
Thank you. No,
Commissioner Donato?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 5 questions, so I hope I can address all 5 of those at once. The first question I have is, what impact does the Roadrunner Association, what impact does concept B have with regard to Roadrunner?
We do, Madam Chair, Commissioner Donato, have also that comparison sheet that does show all of the neighborhood associations that are split in their respective plans. B, because B includes all of that northern part north of Airport Road in one district, would not split the Roadrunner West Homeowner Association in B. B splits the Candlelight Neighborhood Association.
Okay, all right, thank you. My second question is it true that A3 keeps neighborhood north of airport together similarly to B? The other neighborhood associations besides Roadrunner?
In B, all the neighborhood associations north of airport are intact.
All right, thank you. Can we look at the city planner's growth map and overlay it onto this?
Michael, we had a PDF that was provided to us by the city, and Commissioner Donato, is that the one you're referring
Yes.
to? It was just a PDF provided by the city.
And this is also a question that I think the public comment from District 4 addresses as well. Just as a commentary, I know that the bulk of the growth we've looked at is in Districts 3 and 4. What I'm looking at, what I'm more interested in is the future growth in 1 and 2, because we know there's going to be growth there. I just want to know how much of that growth is going to be in 1 and 2.
That's it, Michael.
Commissioner Donato?
Yes, so the blue identifies, I can't read it from here.
So, Commissioner Donato, it's hard for me to read from here. So blue is under construction,
Okay,
and I guess it's hard to tell, but beige is pending land use board, and green is land use board approved.
all right, can you drop that map down a little bit? Just scroll down so I can see the upper portion of 1.
It's a PDF, and this, we're seeing everything that's in the PDF.
We can do it, okay. All right, thank you for that. When discussing, my last question, and now I have a bunch of comments when we finally get to the vote. My last question is, when we discuss growth, population growth or future population growth, and we're looking at just, let's just take, for example, District 3. And we look at District 3, and the difference between B and A3 modified is a difference of positive 0.22 in B percent, and in A3 modified, it's a negative 3.5. Is there a way to quantify the number of adult citizens that would comprise negative 3.5 to positive 2.2?
That's about 5% of the ideal population of a district, right, Michael?
Right, so if we said, I'm just trying to, if we quantify it, just looking at, I'm trying to figure this out. So we're trying to figure out what the number, the change in adult population is, between, say, 0 deviation and negative 3.5 on the
Right.
adult pop. Rough, I'm just gonna off the top of my
Yeah,
head,
rough.
750 maybe,
Yeah, okay.
roughly?
Yeah, my numbers came to 810. So, okay. All right, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other discussion items? Questions, clarifying comments? Commissioner Breckner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Donato's question kind of got me wondering, as population grows overall, we focused on this number here, but at a time, let's say 10 years from now, when our next commission meets, they'll be dealing with totally new census numbers. So the percentage of growth based on what we're considering now will end up being new percentages for all districts based on higher population, presumably, for the city, within the city borders at that time. So it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the percentages that we're looking at now, if we try to figure out whether 200 people or 300 people is going to put us over or under our numbers now, that's not as meaningful as it will be 10 years from now when a next commission may meet and is looking at a totally different, higher population.
Commissioner Breckner, yes, you will be looking at totally different numbers. The question is whether you feel that keeping, let's say, high negative deviations in the potentially highest growth areas will mitigate what the numbers might look like. That over the course of the 10 years will inevitably, some districts will become much larger than plus or minus 5%. Those people over the decade might be underrepresented because they have 2 counselors for more population. Can you mitigate that now or not, and how important is that to you?
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Breckner. Great questions and good response. Any other questions, commissioners? If not, I'm open to a motion. Commissioner Breckner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I make this motion because, again, there seems to have been a liking of A3. We seem to have accommodated some of the questions we asked before with this modified A3. I prefer it personally to the others. And so I'm going to make a motion that we, forgive me, drafted it, and I don't want to misstate what I wrote. I move that concept A3 as modified, A3 modified, be approved as the established districting plan pursuant to City Ordinance 6-18.
A motion from Commissioner Breckner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Grazier. Thank you so much. So, discussion on the motion. Commissioner
Madam Chair, just as
Donato.
a point of clarification, is this the point now where we're going to be discussing whether A3 moves forward or a challenge to the motion and bringing up another option?
Well, this motion is stating that A3 be modified, I'm sorry, the motion states that move concept A3 modified be approved as the established districting plan. And so we would vote on this yea or nay, discuss it, vote on it yea or nay, and if it fails to pass, then we can make more motions. If it passes, then we have to do some certification to make sure that it complies with all of the requirements that
Okay.
are required
All right,
to.
I understand.
So,
Thank you.
okay. So, any further discussion on the motion? We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Riker?
think you all did a great job pulling together this modified A3, okay? And met a lot of the objections as far as keeping precincts together and in the same area. I guess to me, it doesn't seem like it presents much of a change. It's pretty much a status quo, sort of, which I guess there's nothing wrong with. But I also think that there's nothing wrong with change either. And that change often helps us to move into a different place. And I guess I don't see a lot of that. So one reason why I prefer B is that there will be commissioners moved into one area, one district, and another district, I believe it's 4, is left with no representation. And so we would have to get 2 new people moving in there. And I prefer that. I prefer to see, and I just hate the phrase new blood, but I prefer that at this point where we are as a city. We're on the, I guess I see us as on the cusp of a great deal of change. Right now, if you look at that one map that shows all of the construction that has been approved and construction that's awaiting approval, we are on the cusp of change, and we're on the cusp of growing massively. And I believe somebody said something, well, what if we get another district added in? Mary, I believe that was you, is that right? Yeah, and I think that it's a reasonable question. At some point, the charter may need to be changed. At this point, it isn't. So maybe it's time for us to start thinking in terms of future in a little different way than just simply population growth. I think we know where the population growth, we think we do anyway, we know where it is. Okay, there's no guarantees on any of this. But I'm just thinking that maybe part of what we want to think about is change and how it would impact us, because it's coming at us anyway. It's coming at us like a train, okay? And we could either, it would be nice not to be in a train wreck. So,
Anything else, Commissioner?
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Weber?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would say, based upon the public comment that I've heard, that concept B concerns a lot of the residents that we've heard from, that they really prefer a north-south orientation to the separation between districts 3 and 4. I think that I also prefer that, which leads me to believing that either A3 or A3 modified are the best options for redistricting. I base this on the belief that they best account for the undercounted minorities with the negative deviations as required by our city charter, and for future population growth within the districts by having those negative deviations from the ideal populations for District 3 and 4, and that the north-south orientation reflects the wishes of the residents. And if I were to choose A3 over A3 modified, and I think both are fine, I would probably choose A3 simply because it sticks to the major streets a little bit better. It represents the least amount of change from the existing district outlines, and I really don't see a downside to splitting the precinct that is being discussed. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Weber. I have Commissioner Bruckner and then Commissioner Grazer next. Commissioner Bruckner?
Just very briefly, thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to echo the point that Commissioner Weber made at the last meeting where we were in District 3, I believe, and close to District 4. commenters specifically used the word for concept B. Nightmare was one of the words, and disaster was from someone else. And there were a number of other comments that were in opposition to B and supportive of the A3 concept, which is the one that we were looking at most closely at that time before we modified our thoughts. I'd further note that it eliminates pairings and therefore tends to reduce voter confusion, I believe, and again, by keeping the structure somewhat similar to where we are now and recognizing Chair Ortiz's point at the last meeting, we're building on what a commission did before us in 2015. The A series and A3 modified that I've moved here best represent where we should go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Grazier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm the first to admit that I'm somewhat cautious by nature, and you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's certainly something I can tend to live with. You know, I do appreciate Commissioner Raker's comments. Not sure if I agree that in the context of the plan development in the city, that concept B particularly addresses that development better than concept, many of them really, but certainly than the concept A3 modified. I do think that A3 modified adequately addresses the concerns we're looking at, such as minority voting rights and communities of interest and compact contiguous districts, et cetera. So as I mentioned a couple meetings ago, you know, this is one I was leaning to. I think that's still true. It's perhaps a little imperfect, but I think it's better than it was, and it works for me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Quintana is on Zoom, and I don't know how to get hold of her, but I'm just shouting out to her now. If she has comments, now would be an appropriate time to do that. And do you all have access to get her to? Okay. So, Commissioner.
I'm here.
Okay, Commissioner Quintana, I'm hoping that you've heard the motion and the.
Yep. Sorry, I'm listening. I'm paying attention. I do not have anything to add except for that if I had to agree, I would agree with A3 modified just because it doesn't split the precinct.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to express your concerns. Since we've heard from everyone on the commission, I'll go ahead and express my position, and it's the same position that I had at the past meeting. Our consultant, I think, indicated to us that the A concepts that we were presented, and we were presented 6 of them, and 3 of them were A's. They're the ones that were built on the 2015 redistricting, the work that redistricting commission did. So it's built on a past process, it's built on past conversations, and I respect the wisdom of that group, and the citizens of Santa Fe have lived with that concept for 5 years now, and we didn't hear anyone coming to our meetings expressing concern with that. So to me, that means a lot. Back to, I think it was well said by my commissioner to my right here, if it's not broke, so, you know, I think it's a good concept. So I like A3, and I further suggested we not split precincts, because I think this way we send to the community a redistricting plan that has precincts, you know, complete in every area, and if they need to split them 10 years from now, well, they certainly have that prerogative. But I think we are complying with the 5 principles quite well, and assigning weight to them that addresses their intention, and I would be in favor of A3 modified. So that's my position. Commissioner Donati, have something more to add?
Yes, I spent the last 2 days looking at the differences between A3 and B over and over and over again. And I just want to go over my thoughts on the differences. In favor of B, not Number one is it splits one association rather than three. It also puts forth, for me, a significant reorientation, which I like. I like change. And I agree with my colleague, Commissioner Riekers over there. It also, B does two things which are very important to me. And that, number one, is it keeps the difference between the high number and the low number, the positive deviation, negative deviation, much lower. It moves it from 7.5 difference to a 4.16 difference, which allows high growth in 3 and 4, keeps it still low, especially in 3, where that was my question regarding 0.22 versus 3.5, but it also allows some growth in the northeast section of 1 and in the southeast section of 2, which we can see on the plans, on the city plans, there is some looking at 1 and 2. Now, this is obviously going to, and I agree with Burrow, and that is that in 10 years, it's going to be totally different. You know, we might see a huge growth, and the numbers have to be relooked at, obviously, but they're going to have to be relooked at anyway. The other thing is that the districts retaining their core, i.e. voter confusion argument, doesn't play very high with me because of the fact that unlike many other states and many other cities, residents can vote anywhere in the county rather than in their precinct itself. But I do appreciate the fact that A3 modified keeps the precincts together, because that to me is important, much more important than associations. The other thing that is a neutral on B and A3 modified is that the municipal redevelopment area, i.e. what we call Midtown, stays in District 4 throughout all of these models. And so the MRA is not affected by any of our redistricting models at all. So if I had to really look at all of these, and the last point, which is a point against B, is 2 points against B, actually, 3 points against B. Number one is it's less compact than in A3 modified, which not by much. I mean, the percentage difference is you know, when we look at it statistically, it's statistically insignificant. It's a very, very small number. The other point is that it moves incumbents from 4 to 3 in B, that we don't see incumbent moving in A3, but that doesn't bother me at all. As a political scientist and as someone who's run for office and someone who's campaigned and someone who's been a campaign strategist for people, I could care less if the incumbents have to move or not move. That is essentially non-consideration. The last point against B, and which is very important, which I care about a lot, is citizen comments. And I agree with Madam Chair that the citizen comments are significant, and the fact that they might have used some hyperbolic language that Commissioner Breckner brought up. But those voices were so small compared to significant, but small, based upon public comment. So having said all that, I still lean towards B, but a little bit less so than I did at the very beginning as compared to A3 modified. So those are my thought processes and assessments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Donato. And I appreciate Commissioner Breckner brought it up, and you also mentioned it, the public comments that we had out there. I I will say I was hoping in this process that we would have a lot more participation and a lot more input from the community, and I was hoping that there was some real thought that was put into the different options that the community would share with us their thoughts. And I have a list of our participation, it's like 3 handfuls is all the participation we had. But those that were here felt strongly about their position, and I have to respect their attendance, and I have to respect the fact that they showed up and that they took the time to research the different concepts and understand the numbers and then give us their opinion. And so I've always thought, and I also ran for office years ago and served as a public official, I always feel that we need to be respectful of and listen to the community. So I appreciate the comments that were presented, and I think the majority of them did prefer the A3 version. And so, again, that just gives me further commitment to put my vote in that direction. But I think that's also important to thank the community, those individuals that came to speak, to thank them for taking the time to do that. So, further conversation, again, Commissioner Quintana, if you would like to speak, please let us know. Commissioner Riker.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the comments that we got. A lot of times, you were right, people came who were very passionate about what they were going to talk about. For example, I know the woman who did not want to see candlelight split was very passionate about that. The question in my mind always is, when you have one person trying to speak for a large group like that, is how representative is that person of that population? So if one person out of 65 speaks, are they speaking for everyone or only for themselves? Okay? So although I think the comments are important, I don't think we can overemphasize them in terms of the value that we give to them. So that's just how I would think about something like that.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Did Commissioner Quintana want to speak? Did she indicate? Further discussion, commissioners? We have a motion before us and a second. Further discussion? No? We will be having a roll call vote on that motion. I'll repeat the motion, and then before we vote, what I would like to do, because our scope of work requires us to assure that each plan shall comply with the criteria, the 5 principles that are specified in the city charter, and so we have to assure that they have not been violated. So before we vote, I'm going to go through those 5 elements and ask our consultant. That way we've got all the information that we need to have in terms of complying with the city charter. So, Mr. Sandoval, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you some questions.
Okay.
Okay. So this is regarding concept A3 modified. Does it meet the requirement that each district shall contain, as nearly as possible, substantially the same population?
They are substantially equal in population, being that they've stayed within the state law of deviations of no greater than plus or minus 5%, so I'd say yes.
Okay, thank you. Does concept A3 modify satisfy the districting plan, that the districting plan must avoid dilution of minority voting strengths?
Yes.
Does concept A3 modify satisfy communities of interest, including those based on ethnic and economic factors, that they shall be preserved within a single district whenever reasonable?
Yes.
And does A3 modified satisfy that each district shall be formed of compact contiguous territories, and the total length of all boundary lines shall be as short as possible?
They are compact and contiguous.
And the last one, Mr. Sanderoff, does concept A3 modify assure that the districting plan shall compensate for U.S. Census undercount of minorities?
The Census Bureau has not released a report on undercounting. The Census Bureau has informed us that Hispanics were undercounted nationwide. The two districts that are majority Hispanic adult voting age population are on the lower end of the population, a higher negative deviation, which would tend to then support that position, that if Hispanics were undercounted, and if there are truly more Hispanics in those districts, then it's better to keep the districts on the lower end of 5%, so that you don't have more Hispanics in those districts than meets the eye due to the undercount. So I'd say to the extent possible, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderoff. That confirms and ensures that our decision, if this motion passes, is based on the 5 districting principles. Okay? So I was going to call for the vote now, but we have a further discussion?
I just have one question.
Mr. Donato?
I just have one question. When we assign these same 5 principles to concept B, can you provide the same answers?
If we get to that point, Mr. Donato, we will ask these
Okay,
questions.
all right.
This is part of my requirement, to ask these questions for each vote that we take. Okay? So, we have Mr. Sanderoff assuring that we are complying with the statute. The motion we have before us, moved by Commissioner Bruckner and seconded by Commissioner Grazier, and correct me if I got it wrong, I tried to capture it. Commissioner Bruckner moved that concept A3 modified be approved as the established districting plan pursuant to city ordinances.
And if I may, Madam Chair, I had referenced pursuant to City Ordinance 6-18 to be specific.
Thank you. That is the motion, a motion and a second. I will ask for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Grazier,
Aye.
Commissioner Donato,
No.
Commissioner Weber,
Aye.
Commissioner Riekers,
No.
Commissioner Bruckner,
Aye.
Commissioner Quintana.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
And I would like to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, you may vote also. Commissioner Ortiz.
Thank you. Aye.
Thank you.
The motion passes by a vote of
There were only 2 nays.
5-2. Okay, thank you, commissioners. I think that, and I guess we just require a majority, so 5-2 is a majority, so that this motion will move the A3 modified plan to the city council for their implementation, because this independent commission has the authority to make the decision. And so I'm just going to move to the last 2 items on the agenda. There's item number 7, matters from the commission. If there's any other issues, matters, now would be the time to bring it up, Commissioner Grazier.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank the commissioners. I've really enjoyed this process. I really appreciated the very thoughtful and very diverse opinions of everyone on the commission. And it was quite enjoyable for me, and I appreciate the chair and vice chair's gentle but firm ruling hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Donato.
Yes, I'd like to echo Commissioner Grazier's comments. This is my 3rd redistricting commission. I've been on 1 in Boston, 1 in Norwich, Connecticut, and now here. And I'd like to point out three things. Number one is this is the most collegial commission I've been on. And the less animus or problematic than the other two. The Boston one was incredibly contentious, painful, and difficult. I would also like to thank the city's clerk's office for providing us with incredibly quick information and keeping the public informed through a variety of sources. And of course, we could not have done our job without the Polling and Research Center. And having taught GIS, Global Information Systems, a number of years, and as a quantoid myself, I greatly appreciate the work that you've put into this and the quick turnaround of data sets so that we could look at them. So thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Donato. Anyone else? Commissioner Breckner.
Thank you. I see my mic's on. I hope I wasn't making comments before. I would just like to stress, for the purposes of the minutes and for any public that might be viewing and here as well, stress again that because of some confusion in the newspaper reporting on this, and ultimately they did make a correction, which I very much appreciate, that our decision is the decision, and that it is implemented by the City Council because the changes in this district plan have to be recorded and documented in city ordinances. But we have made the decision, and this is unique, as I understand it from Mr. Sandroff, that our commission is unique in the state of New Mexico in that we're the only ones who have the decision-making authority for redistricting. We're not recommending to another body. We have made the decision, and I think that's appreciate everyone's work to make that decision, and I'm glad it's this way, and I think it is a very beneficial way, and respect the community and the predecessors who changed the charter to make it the way it is. And I thank all who have been thanked already who are involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Breckner. Anyone else? Commissioner Weber.
As a late joining member of the committee, I wanted to thank the city clerk and Research and Polling for helping me get up to speed as quickly as possible on this. It's sort of like drinking through a fire hose, but you held the hose steady, and I appreciate that. I also want to say I'm very impressed with the work the committee has done, and in particular our chair, and want to thank you all for all the hard work that you've done and brought forth for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Commissioner Riker.
I would echo what everyone has said. We've had such wonderful cooperation from the city. It's unbelievable. And from Mr. Sandroff and everyone who works for him. And I know everyone wishes that Brittany would be well as quickly as possible and takes whatever time she needs to heal. And the people who showed up, I feel a great deal of gratitude that you took the time to do it and that you bothered to watch all of this, the maps, and look at the maps and, and all of that kind of stuff, and then brush your concerns. So it's y'all, and as well as the ones who were in previous meetings, and everyone here. I really appreciate knowing every one of you. And so perhaps in 10 years we'll be back again. I doubt it. I truly doubt it. But
thank you, Commissioner. Someone will. Commissioner Quintana, did you have anything to add or share?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to thank all the city clerk staff and Research and Polling, and I want to thank you, commissioners. It's been really great to be a part of this process and get to know everyone and listen to you, and I just am very grateful that you allowed me to be here through the Zoom today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Any of the commissioners? I think we all had an opportunity to voice your comments. I have one matter from the chair I want to share with you, and that is the City of Santa Fe will hold their regular meeting of the governing body Wednesday, July 13th at 5 p.m., and that is where they will receive our approval at that point. And so the scope of work requires that, and we have complied with the scope of work, that this commission finish our process by July 1. And I'm going to read from the scope of work. We're required to complete the redistricting process by July 1, 2022, including but not limited to the delivery and acceptance by the city, all deliveries set forth in paragraph F, Exhibit A, and attachments, and those are all of the documents that Brian and his staff has prepared. So we completed the process by July 1. It further says the contractor and the independent citizen Redistricting Commission chairperson shall, so we are required to, present the redistricting plan at the July 13, 2022 governing body meeting. So I will be there, and I'm hoping Mr. Sandroff will be there, and hopefully even the rest of his staff. But I want to invite each of you to join us, because I would love to be able to introduce you to the counselors at that meeting. That meeting, again, is July 13th at 5 p.m., so I'm inviting you all to attend. And again, I also would like to thank the city staff. You guys are awesome. I know you're spread thin, but you did a really good job and made this process seamless, and I think it ran quite smooth. And I just really want to thank the volunteer commissioners, because there's a lot of time that's put into these meetings, a lot of homework and a lot of study, and I appreciate you taking the time to step up and provide your insight and your expertise to the citizens of the city of Santa Fe. Thank you for that. And kudos to Mr. Sanderoff and his staff. I was chatting with him earlier trying to determine when we met, and we decided we both met when we were 12 back in the 70s. And so he continues to do great work for the city, and I want to thank the city for hiring Mr. Sanderoff's organization to do this work, because that was done before we all were convened. And I think that's what made this process so seamless, so efficient, and so effective. And thank you, Mr. Sandoff, and your staff. Did you want to
No,
say?
just thank you so much. And my staff just make me look good, and so they do fantastic work. And let me just say one other thing. Working with Santa Fe is unique, and we worked with Santa Fe in 2015, and the way this commission members are selected is unique to the state, and you see a tremendous difference in how things work out as a result.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderoff. They don't call us the city different without a good reason. So thank you. Anything further? Nothing further. I hereby adjourn this meeting of the City of Santa Fe Independent Redistricting Commission at 4:14, and thank you very much.